I am going to let you in on a cinematic secret so unbelievably massive, it is literally going to change the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it. Seriously, everything you thought you knew about how this story ends is about to be turned upside down. Now, we all know the sheer, unimaginable scale of the Infinity Saga, right? And we know that in this particular cinematic universe, absolutely no detail is an accident. The directors, the Russo brothers, they meticulously crafted every single frame, every passing glance, and every line of dialogue to mean something much bigger. Well, today I'm going to break down exactly how Tony Stark actually defeated Dr. Doom long before he ever snapped Thanos out of existence in Avengers Endgame. Yeah, you heard me right. Before that final iconic snap, before the dust ever even started to settle on that ruined battlefield, Tony had already fought and won the greatest multiversal war of all time. Let me explain this carefully because we really need to dive deep into the timeline lore, the specific cinematic framing, and the complex character psychology of Tony Stark. I promise you, by the time we're done here, you will never ever watch Endgame the same way again.
Okay, so let's dive right into this massive, seemingly impossible paradox. We've got a bit of a contradiction on our hands. We all know Kevin Feige has firmly, publicly promised that Iron Man's ultimate sacrifice in Endgame is sacred. His death is permanent. It will not be undone because, let's be real, to do so would completely ruin the emotional stakes that took over a decade of storytelling to build. Period. You just don't touch that ending. Yet, at the exact same time, the directors themselves have explicitly confirmed that Tony Stark is profoundly deeply connected to the upcoming events of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. So, how in the world is this possible? If his death is completely permanent, how on earth does a deceased Tony Stark fight the looming apocalyptic threat of Dr. Doom? I really want us to feel the absolute weight of this contradiction, because the answer, it isn't some cheap resurrection. The answer actually lies hidden in plain sight, buried deep in the very fabric of time travel relativity.
Now, to really understand the catalyst for all of this, we actually have to look at Captain America. Think about it. When Steve Rogers made the incredibly human, kind of selfish, yet entirely earned decision to stay in the past and live out his life with Peggy Carter, he didn't just get a simple, isolated, happy ending. No, he acted as the ultimate butterfly effect. By staying behind, he fundamentally altered the timeline, creating a massive, sprawling chain of multiversal incursions. He fractured what we know as the sacred timeline. And here's where it gets terrifying. In the upcoming Doomsday storyline, Dr. Doom's primary goal is to hunt down and completely eradicate anyone who is creating these dangerous temporal shockwaves. Doom operates on a cosmic scale, a level of power we can barely comprehend, and Steve's actions, acting like a beacon, caught Doom's attention across the entire multiverse. Doom is coming for all the characters who messed with the timelines, effectively setting the stage for an unparalleled, catastrophic multiversal collision.
Section 1. The Overlooked Endgame Clue. A hidden secret buried in the rubble. Let's move into that very clue and see how this all brilliantly builds back into Avengers Endgame. I want you to cast your mind back, really visualize the exact moments immediately following the Hulk putting on the gauntlet and reversing the snap. There is a deeply hidden secret tucked away in a few throwaway lines of dialogue that we all completely missed on our first, second, and honestly even our third viewings. Let's slow things right down for a second and heavily analyze the cinematic framing and the pacing of that specific beautiful scene. Picture the absolute silence. Step 1, Scott Lang looks out the window. The camera deliberately lingers on the sheer raw emotion on his face as he notices the birds returning to the trees. Life is finally back. The lighting is incredibly soft and warm. Then, step 2. In that beautiful quiet, Hawkeye's phone lights up and vibrates. It's his wife, Laura, calling. It's an atmosphere of absolute pure relief. Against all odds, the Avengers did the impossible. And then, step 3. Out of absolutely nowhere, the auditory shock is completely deafening. Violent, sudden, and absolutely terrifying, Thanos' ship unleashes a devastating bombardment, entirely obliterating the Avengers compound. In literally a millisecond, that hard-won piece is utterly shattered by total destruction.
Now, this is the crucial part. Focus closely on the exact dialogue in the terrifying aftermath of that explosion. Deep in the dark, suffocating, dust-filled rubble, Tony Stark walks over to an unconscious Steve Rogers holding his shield. He bends down and wakes Captain America up. I want you to look at the massive contrast in their physical demeanors here. Steve is groggy, he's panicked, he's utterly confused by the absolute apocalypse happening around them. But Tony is eerily, perfectly calm. It's almost unsettling. He looks at Steve and delivers this exact line. You mess with time, it tends to mess back. You'll see. Let's heavily analyze that for a second. How did Tony know the profound, terrifying consequences of time travel in that very exact second? He didn't look up and say, oh no, Thanos followed us from the past. He explicitly framed the destruction around time itself messing back. And think about the phrasing. Why would he specifically say "you'll see" to Steve Rogers?
The answer to that question is totally mind-bending. Tony wasn't just guessing. He wasn't just making a cynical, witty quip in the face of imminent death like he usually does. He had already lived the consequences. The entire core of what I am explaining to you today revolves around this incredible concept of an eternity happening within a single millisecond. In the microscopic split seconds between the Avengers compound violently exploding and Tony casually walking over to wake Cap up, an entire sweeping multiversal war took place. For us, the audience sitting in the theater, and for Scott Lang looking out the window, it was just a sudden, horrific explosion. But because of how time relativity actually works in the MCU's quantum realm and the multiverse beyond, for Tony Stark, an absolute eternity had just passed.
Section 2. Loki's multiversal time heist. Recruiting the ultimate savior. So how exactly did this happen right under our noses? Well, this is where Loki comes in. Just like the Avengers executed a desperate time heist to gather the Infinity Stones in their universe, Loki is out there executing his own sprawling, incredibly dangerous multiversal time heist. He is jumping across time and space, frantically gathering the most important, capable heroes to stop the impending, reality-ending threat of Doctor Doom. Let me break down the exact timeline of that explosive millisecond for you. The blast hits the compound. Boom. In the very next microsecond, a glowing time door rips open amidst the falling concrete and rebar, and Loki arrives. He finds an unconscious Tony Stark. Before the dust can even begin to settle, Loki pulls Tony through the portal and straight into the TVA. And as we know, in the TVA, time mechanics work completely differently. Time is meaningless there. Over what feels to Tony like hours or even days, Loki meticulously explains Doctor Doom, the multiverse, the concept of variance, and the impending incursions. And why did Loki choose Tony out of everyone? Because Loki knows Tony possesses the sheer intellect to rival Doom. And maybe more importantly, Tony has carried the agonizing burden of cursed knowledge ever since the Battle of New York. Tony goes from fighting Thanos in his mind to suddenly understanding the vast, terrifying, infinite scope of all realities.
Section 3. The Secret Wars Battle. Facing the ultimate dark reflection.
Armed with this massive, unprecedented new multiversal knowledge, Tony Stark is recruited into the Secret Wars battle. I want you to imagine this incredibly vivid cinematic image for a second. The completely mortal Tony Stark we know and love from Endgame, but suddenly elevated with the forbidden knowledge of infinite timelines, stepping onto the apocalyptic battlefield of Secret Wars to fight a threat astronomically larger than Thanos could ever dream of. But here's the thing. This battle isn't just physical. It's a deep, agonizing psychological study for our hero. When Tony finally faces Doctor Doom, he isn't just looking at a villain in a metal mask. He is looking into a terrifying, twisted mirror. He is looking at an evil variant of himself. Doom has the exact same brilliant mind, the same face, and a highly similar life path. But I want you to think back to Tony's hubris in Age of Ultron. Doom represents the ultimate, horrifying nightmare of a completely unchecked Stark. At crucial crossroads in his life, this variant chose ultimate, absolute power and control over selfless heroism. Seeing this dark reflection in the flesh is an absolute psychological shock to Tony's very core. It's walking, talking proof of everything he ever feared his own ego could have turned him into.
But, because he is who he is, our Tony, the hero, prevails. Step 1. Alongside an army of multiversal heroes, Doom is finally defeated in the climax of Secret Wars. Step 2. With the mission complete and the multiverse temporarily saved, Loki brings Tony back. But because of the incredibly precise nature of TVA time travel, Loki drops Tony off seamlessly into the exact millisecond he was taken from. Literally, the blink of an eye. Imagine the surreal, jarring transition he has to process. Going from a literal god-level multiversal war, fighting alongside variants, right back to the dirt, the suffocating dust, and the falling rubble of his own timeline in a fraction of a second. Step 3. Tony dusts himself off, now carrying the massive, crushing secret of the entire multiverse on his shoulders, and he walks over to wake up Captain America. When he hands him the shield and says, "You mess with time, it tends to mess back," he isn't talking about Thanos. He is explicitly, knowingly, talking about the multiversal war he literally just finished fighting. Section 4. The True Iron Man Legacy. What the final snap really meant.
This incredible revelation brings us right to the emotional climax of Endgame. Let's really slow down here and completely reframe the monumental weight of Tony's final stand. Knowing that Tony has just witnessed firsthand a version of himself who gave in to his worst instincts and became a multiversal dictator, we have to look at the final moments of his life through an entirely new, incredibly profound lens. It changes absolutely everything about why he did what he did in those final seconds. When Tony Stark kneels down on the battlefield, the power of the Infinity Stone surging through his armor, tearing him apart, and he looks Thanos dead in the eyes saying, "And I am Iron Man," he isn't really just looking at Thanos anymore. He is looking right past him. This is no longer just a cool callback to the end of his first movie. It is a direct, conscious, definitive rejection of his evil variant. It is Tony telling the entire multiverse, and maybe more importantly, proving to himself that he is not Dr. Doom. He is the man who lays down on the wire so the other guy can crawl over him.
So, what you should really take away from this is the deeply layered, beautiful meaning of his selfless heroism. By snapping his fingers and willingly sacrificing his own life, Tony provides the absolute ultimate proof to the entire multiverse. He proves definitively that the true, unshakable core of Tony Stark is not ego, and it is absolutely not power. It is sacrifice. By dying, he permanently locks his universe's timeline away from the corruption of his dark variants. He solidifies his legacy with absolute finality and perfection. He ensures that no matter what twisted, evil versions of him exist out there in the vastness of the multiverse as Dr. Doom, his personal legacy remains completely, beautifully untainted. He fought for the good of all, he rejected the temptation of absolute power, and he died a pure, uncompromised hero.
Which leaves us with this incredible, lingering thought to chew on. Just think about the absolutely insane journey we just took together. The entirety of Secret Wars, the epic, reality-bending battle against Dr. Doom, occurred in the absolute, literal blink of an eye during the events of Avengers Endgame. Did we just witness the greatest, most brilliantly hidden storyline in cinematic history? I mean, the sheer planning and foresight it takes to weave a narrative like that is staggering. The next time you sit down to watch Endgame, when that compound explodes and the dust slowly begins to settle in the dark, just remember what really happened. In that single, chaotic second of darkness, Tony Stark saved the entire multiverse and returned just in time to save his own. I guarantee you, for sure, you will never look at Endgame the same way again.